Salutations Rangers, General Bradley 101 back again with some more lore. In today's video, boys and gals, we're back with what our people get wrong about X series. And today, we're covering something very stoic. And some may say even a little yellow. Because ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about the good old lemon boys of Papa Rogodon, Lord Adorable himself. We're talking about the Imperial Fists. And we're going to discuss and take a look and see exactly what people get wrong about everyone's favorite yellow wall boys. So, strap on in, buckle up, and let's get cracking on with today's video. The 7th Legion Imperial Fists were created on Terra like all Space Marine legions, and they immediately distinguished themselves amongst their other legion brothers. Whereas most legions were used as shock assault troops to break the enemy and to destroy them, the Imperial Fists were different. You see, after let's say the Warhounds or the Blood Angels came through and they just wrecked shop on everything and they killed whoever was there, it'd be the Imperial Fists who would come up and establish the fortifications. They would reinforce the sector. They'd build it up, and they'd wait for the counterattack. For those of you who don't know, in military strategy, when an opponent attacks an enemy position and captures said position, people will try and retake it. Hence, whilst capturing a position is in fact quite easy, holding said position is normally quite difficult. This has been the case in World War I and World War II particularly, in which case, one side will take a position, but then be thrown back from it. And then this will repeat time and time again. Hence we get such terrible grindy battles. So the Imperial Fists knew this, and the Emperor knew this, and he assigned the Fists to be his defenders, to be his bastions. And bastions did they build. The Imperial Fists would build up the area, they would hold it, and they would defend, and they would keep on defending until the enemy stopped, or they were broken upon their walls. That is what the Fists were meant to do. And they did it so well that the Emperor decreed him that they were the Fists of his Imperium, bastion mites that could withstand anything, and if need be, drive a hammer blow upon the enemy. And these are one of the few examples in which case that we have a Space Marine Legion actually keeping its name from before it met its Primarch. As Rogodon hearing about this name and seeing everything about it, he was like, yeah, that's good. Speaking of Lord Adorable, Rogodon would be found on the planet of Inwit, and he would be very much like his Legion, and he'd be very impressed by them. Stoic, determined, unyielding, and, you know, not really that funny. Not really exactly someone you want at a party, but definitely somebody you want to man in a wall. So from there, Rogodon would continue across the entirety of the Great Crusade, and the Imperial Fist became known for two things: unyielding, stoic defense, and a very massive navy. They were indeed one of the most premier naval powers, having one of the largest fleets of all the Astartes. And they would continue to serve admirably throughout the entirety of the Heresy, culminating on just before the Istvan atrocity, they would be named the Guardians of Terra, with Dawn as their Praetorian. The highest honor given unto any of the Primarchs save for the War Master Horus himself. Of course, everything would kind of go to hell in a handbasket. The heresy would happen and the Imperial Fists would be quite shaken by this. But they'd be filled with stoic resolve, and they would be involved heavily in the heresy, fighting, defending, and taking all types of hits left and right. Ultimately, the heresy would see the Fists changed, and some would say broken. For Rogodon would see the Emperor broken upon the vengeful spirit, and that would break Dawn, some would say, and he would be lost. So much so that it would take his legion being basically beyond decimated, losing approximately 70 to 80% of its number in the Iron Cage incident, where Perturabo created a giant planet-sized fortress and dared Dawn to come and get him. Rogodon would then declare that he would drag Perturabo back in an iron cage, and hence the battle got its name. But the battle was a joke. Rogodon knew it was a trap, but he didn't care. Some say that's because he needed his legion to be blooded, some say it was out of a rare moment of emotional rage. Truth be told, we don't know. But whatever it was, the Fists would be utterly devastated, and it looked like the Iron Warriors would claim victory over the long-hated rivals until the arrival of the Ultramarines. Together, the two legions were able to push back against Perturabo and inflict grievous casualties on the Iron Lord. But he himself, as well as his important figures, were able to escape, leaving it a very Pyrrhic victory, if one could even call it that. From there, the Imperial Fists would acquiesce, and they would be broken up into chapters. Something which Rogodon was vehemently against. However, to safeguard this, he initiated something called the Last Wall Protocol, meaning that if and ever Terra itself of the Imperium was under threat, every single successor chapter of the Fists would come together and reform the Legion to guard the homeworld. And that's had to happen a time or two, and the Fists have paid for it each time. But that's a TLDR about the Imperial Fists. Now, we can get into the juicy bit. What exactly do people get wrong about the Imperial Fists? And what people get wrong, ladies and gentlemen, is that they're soldiers. They're not Space Marines. Now, what exactly do I mean by that? Because I know there are a few of you who are looking at me going, what do you mean they're not Space Marines? They're literally Space Marines. Yes, but as I've mentioned before, and many people have mentioned, and as some have seen, Space Marines are very much knightly. They have this old air of knights about them, especially in modern day 40k, where they quite literally have fiefs and they have power armor, which is like plate armor, and significantly better than the gambeson, aka flak armor, that the normal levies have. They are knights in pretty much every single aspect of them. If not directly intently, because of circumstance of 40k, that's what they look like. But the Imperial Fists are not knights. They are soldiers. Now, what is the difference between a warrior, a knight, and a soldier? A warrior fights for a variety of reasons, and most of them are like a soldier. Family, honor, to protect people, but a warrior also needs glory. He needs accolades. His banners fly high and he needs everyone to see who he is. He records his deeds and he wants the world to know that he is Lord, and that is by his blade shall the enemy be felled. Glory, pride, and honor are something that is incredibly important to the warrior caste. They're also important to a soldier, yes, but whereas with the soldier they are second-hand things, many warriors throughout history, those were the first things that they did. And the Imperial Fists are just not that. At least in 40k. The Imperial Fists in 40k are soldiers. Why? Because that's all that remained after the splitting. Only the soldiers remained. Now, allow me to explain this further. You see, with the whole changing of the Legion into chapters, the Imperial Fists suffered the most out of any of the Loyalist legions. Now, what do I mean by that? You take a look at the Ultramarines, Blood Angels, Space Wolves, right? You take a look at the big chapters. They, in of themselves, they maintained a core of the true Ultramarines, of the true Blood Angels, etc., so on and so forth. And so too did the Fists. The problem was, though, whereas with the Blood Angels and the Ultramarines and the other chapters, every single Space Marine tried to emulate what the Legion was. And even in some cases, where you have specialist formations like, say, the Nemesis chapter for the Ultramarines breaking off and forming their own chapter, they still were able to hold on to some ideals of the Ultramarines, and they still tried to show themselves as Ultramarine successors. But even when some people point out that things like the Emperor's Spears and the Nemesis chapter, the Water Factors, they're nothing like the Ultramarines, that doesn't mean that the original Ultramarines are bad in any way, shape, or form. The Ultramarine aesthetic, Romans, is great, and they keep that very well, and that's because there's so much character to it. The regular standard Ultramarines chapter has so much character to it. The Fists, though, they do not. You see, the way that the Fists are structured, as I said, they're soldiers. Every single one of them has something that they're supposed to do, and they do it well, and they get it done, they don't complain. So too, were the Legion structured like that. The problem is, though, when the Legion was split, each individual aspect of the Imperial Fist, what made the Legion so cohesive, what gave it its character, split off individually. The Imperial Fist Legion was characterized by the fact that you had each unique element, each unique cadre being the best of what they can do. They were structured like a military. You had the air wing, you had the naval forces, you had the military, you had the marines, you had the army. They were structured like that. The problem is that when the Legion was split, the individual branches were split with them. The marines became their own chapter, the army became their own chapter, the navy became their own chapter. And I'm not over-exaggerating when I say this. You had Fafnir, the leader of the assault cadre, and the breachers, the Marines. He would go on to found the Executioners, which are a third founding chapter. You then have Sigismund. Sigismund lead the Templar Brethren. They are very much the dutiful monastic knights of the Imperial Fist. They were the pomp, the flair, the ceremony of it all. That is who they were. And he would go on to found the Black Templars. You then have Alexis Pollux, the fleet master of the entire Imperial Fist Legion. So much so that he could hold his own against Perturabo, a Primarch. And he would go on to found the Crimson Fist chapter. You think about the other successors. You then have the Soul Drinkers. The Soul Drinkers were the drop assault specialists. They were meant to go in, hit hard, and they broke off and they formed their own legion. Those who retained at the very core of the Imperial Fist were the army, the soldiers, those who stood steadfast, those who did their job, those who didn't complain. They had a job to do and they did it. And whilst that's very, very, very important and incredibly necessary to a functioning military, it is boring. As any infantryman will tell you, being an infantry is terribly necessary, but hella boring, and that's the problem. All the exciting elements that made up the Legion, they went off in their own different ways, and they formed their own different chapters. Hence, while you get the common complaint, oh, the Imperial Fists get outshined by their successors. The successors have so much more character to them, they're just so much better. Yes, they have so much more character, but they're not better. They have the character because they were the character of the Legion. You take a look at the chapters we talked about. Those, as part of a military, not only have so much culture, but they have a purpose. And, as we all know, a purpose and identity is tied to a culture, because you can't have an identity or a culture without knowing what your purpose is. And, that brings us to the problem with the Fists. The Fists' purpose are to stand on a wall, to garrison a barracks, to garrison a fortress, and to kill anyone that comes anywhere near them. Incredibly effective, but hilariously boring. All the flashy elements of the original Legion were made their own chapters, meaning that all the flashy stuff got ejected from the Imperial Fists. And this, in my opinion, is why people really misunderstand the Imperial Fists. The Imperial Fists are incredibly necessary, they're incredibly potent, and they are incredibly important. Yet they are often forgotten. Why? Because their job is the boring job, but the boring necessary job. They don't have the Roman flair to them like the Ultramarines. They don't have the tragic vampiric nature of the Blood Angels. They don't have the Viking berserker rampage of the Space Wolves, nor do they have the secret Arthurian hidden nonsense of the Dark Angels. They lack a lot of that flavor, because their job is not meant to be that specific thing. The Blood Angels are meant to be drop assault shock specialists, the vampires tearing at their foe. The Dark Angels are meant to be secretive knights, holding the ancient mysteries of the forgotten past and fighting the hidden enemy. The Salamanders are meant to be the terrible dragon of humanity, guarding its kin and protecting it with its massive scales, and unleashing devastating hellfire if anyone should dare try and kill them. The Imperial Fists, they're the Marines on a wall. The Imperial Fists, they're the grunts on a wall holding a fortress. It's not flashy, it's not glory in it, but it is necessary. Another common complaint that you hear is like, oh, the Fists just don't do anything. But that is very, very hilariously wrong. The Fists have been involved in pretty much almost every single major engagement of the Space Marine era. They sent a good chunk of their forces to help retake Rincewind from the Orcs. They prevented Be'lakor and the Shantu's plan to destroy Terra. They were present for the coordinate assault on Terra, and they actually helped prevent that, defend it, doing their job as the Praetorians, and help secure the Astronomicon. They were there for the fall of Cadia, the Vigilus campaign, not to mention the Fourth Tyrannic War. They were there for the Hexarchy plot, and they helped stop it. I mean, hell, it was even an Imperial Fist apothecary that treated Guilliman's wounds on Luna. Not to mention, in the recent Pariah Nexus and Warthone Sizotha, they're there too, holding the line. They're there. They're always there. But the problem is, it's a matter of perception. They're not there leading the charge. They're not there doing the great last stands. They're not there earning the glory. They're not front and forward. They're just not. They're right behind, in the second line, holding the wall, doing what needs to be done. And ultimately, that's what people get wrong about the Imperial Fists. People often think, oh, they're dumb, they're boring, or they're useless, and that's not the case at all. They are hilariously intelligent. They're hilariously important, and they have paid for it. The Imperial Fists hold the infamous honor of being the only Space Marine original Legion to be destroyed to nearly a man. Not just once, this has happened at least twice, in the aftermath of the Heresy and during the War of the Beast. They stood, they defended, they defied, and they were torn asunder. They held the line until it broke. They held the line until they broke. For what was broken was not their morale, but rather it was their back upon the walls of their fortress. And that is what people get wrong about them. They don't see the Imperial Fists for what they are. They see a lack of pomp, a lack of flair. They see them as just, oh, it's just dull. But hey, let me point it out to you. When you go to the store, you go and you buy your groceries and you exit, you see the security guard. He's there. And he's not going to just stay there for a few minutes. He's going to be there for most of the night. You see a nurse at a hospital, you see doctors at a hospital, they're there for the whole night. You see a fireman riding on the truck, he's not going home, he's going to be there for the whole night. They are not there every single minute. They are not front and center. They're not. But they are still there, making sure that you can do what you are doing, because they're going to take care of everything else. If someone tries to break in, the police and the security will take care of it. If there's a fire, the firemen will go and get it. If someone gets hurt, the doctor will take care of it. If you, in the middle of the night, God forbid, have a friend, have a family member who gets hurt, you go to a doctor. If the doctor wasn't there, you are screwed. That means that you then need to learn how to be a doctor. But you don't have to do that. Because while you're sleeping, while you're gaming, while you're doing everything that you want to do, there is someone sitting in the back line waiting for if you ever have a problem, they will take care of it. And the Imperial Fists are just that. And as I say, they are soldiers. Because whilst there are so many people who are living their best lives, while I'm living my best life, there are soldiers from every single military on this planet who are somewhere on a base doing absolutely nothing, but sitting and waiting for something bad to happen so they can protect you. And it just shows the failing of humanity. The fact that we can look at a chapter that personifies this, the Imperial Fists, and we just go, oh, they're boring. Yeah, it's boring. Being a soldier is boring. Being the guy who goes home last is boring. But you need somebody to do it. Because if he didn't do it, you'd have to do it. And you don't want to do it. So while the Imperial Fists are boring, they are hilariously important. People often make this assumption that, oh, if a job is boring, if it's not flashy, it's not worth it. But that's just the pride of it all. We think, oh, we want to have this super important job, I want to be up in front, I want to be amazing, oh, this job doesn't put me up front, I don't want it. Well, that's your arrogance speaking. You simply just want people to see you and you want people to praise you. You're not worried about doing the job. The fists are. And it's so ironic to me that this exists and that people will say that there's nothing to the Imperial Fists, when inherently, they struggle a lot with their character. The Imperial Fists are a very proud legion. They're a very stubborn legion as well. There has been time and time again where the Imperial Fists have given their lives. There have been time and time again where the Imperial Fists have given their lives needlessly, purely because they said that they would. Dawn talks about it as well. His legion is stubborn, they are prideful, and so much so that the only thing he can think of to convince them that the Codex Astartes is necessary is to have most of them killed. Again, whether or not that actually what happened, I don't know. But it fits with the character of the Imperial Fists. And it fits with the character of the Imperial Fists. Ever since the loss of Dawn, and the failing of Fists and the Dawn to protect the Emperor, the Fists have become very, well, depressed, I guess you could say. Quite literally. One of their gene seed curses is known as Dawn's Darkness, which is a type of melancholy, depressive lack of feelings. Eventually they end up becoming sort of like automata. No thoughts, no feeling, no joy, no pride, nothing, just simply doing a duty until the bite of the blade will take them. They've also become sort of masochistic. The idea of endurance through pain. Pain brings clarity, because if you can endure through pain and realize that you are the master of your flesh, not the other way around, you are then able to gain some form of clarity from that. Problem is though, without Dawn, like all things, it's kind of deteriorated, meaning that they have gotten this sort of pseudo-self-destructive behavior, or self-harming behavior, you could say. Now, how exactly you want to connect that to being a soldier, I can't really say. GW has never really come out saying that there is a connection between that, but we do know that the Imperial Fists are indeed based off Marines specifically. But I think that there's something to be said about a soldier who gets forgotten, a soldier who has nothing, and who, simply trying to feel something and get anything, ends up picking up bad habits that slowly end up destroying him. But even as though he's slowly being devoured by his own choices, it doesn't stop him from doing his duty. Now, again, this isn't the case of... Now, I don't know if this is what GW intended, but even if it's accidental, I can see this being very poetic. And even if it's not the case, I think we should make it so. The Imperial Fists have suffered a lot. Not only in universe, with the loss of Dawn and the loss of the Emperor, but they don't cry out for help. They pride themselves on being the stalwart, stoic bastion that does not move, that does not speak, it does not complain. Even if their heart is bleeding blood red, they will not ever move, because they are the bastion. They are meant to bleed, and if they die, so be it. It doesn't matter how they are feeling, so long as those who they are meant to protect are well. It is quite ironic then that they often compare to the Iron Hands, who, as I've covered in a previous episode, also suffer from some form of mental illness. But whereas the Iron Hands try not to feel anything, the Imperial Fists simply choose to ignore it, ignore the pain, master the pain, and you'll be able to live. But the Imperial Fists do not care about glory, they do not care about accolades, they do not care about being known for their deeds. They care about simply doing a job and getting it done. And it doesn't matter what they have to do to get that job done. They'll do it. They certainly don't care what happens to them on the battlefield or off. And finally, looking at everything and realizing what the Imperial Fists are, much like the Iron Hands, it's quite sad that people just seem to not like them. Not even not like them, they don't even give them the time of day. But because people don't give the Imperial Fists the time of day, through stoicism and through ignoring the pain, that's how they used to cope. And there are plenty of people who do that. So, again, I could go on similar to the Iron Hands about how it's quite ironic that the Legion that kind of has mental illness is often forgotten, but at this point I don't know if GW's meaning to do this, or maybe it's just an accident, or I'm just putting two and two together myself. But the next time you look at the Imperial Fists, remember, they are boring, yes, but that doesn't mean that they are not important, and that doesn't mean that they deserve disrespect. You may not like the Imperial Fists, you certainly may not love them, but you must respect them for one thing, if nothing else. They are the men on the wall. They guard the keep while you sleep. They hold the Bastion when the enemy comes. And at the end of days, it will be them defying everything, even their own pain, simply to hold the line and do what must be done. And for that, above everything else, you should give the Imperial Fists your respect. For all soldiers deserve that respect. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, thank you also very much for watching. Let me know down below what you guys think. Looking into the Imperial Fists, I always kind of knew that they were soldiers, but like looking into their cultural aspect of it, there's a lot of self-harm, I guess you could say, or they don't really care about themselves. They're stoic, right? That's the idea. You do what needs to be done and damn everything else. And this has kind of fallen to the extreme part of stoicism, where it's borderlining on not exactly healthy, a little toxic. And again, seeing a chapter that has like some form of mental illness that isn't really alright upstairs, and seeing them just be forgotten about by the fandom, I know I could go a little bit more in depth into that, and I could be like, oh no, this is actually, you know, cause of humanity, blah blah blah. Or it could be a case of people are already mentally ill, they don't want to play the mentally ill chapter. But it depends on how generous you want to be with the Warhammer 40k community. But please, let me know down below, what do you guys think? Do you guys have a newfound love for the Imperial Fists now? Do you guys respect them at least? And what do you guys think about them having some sort of mental illness? Let me know what you guys want to hear down below. But to my Imperial Fist fans, I hope I did your chapter proud. And if nothing else, know that I deeply respect them and kind of like them. Always love my heavy infantry. But I want to say a massive thank you to you guys for watching, and even more massive thank you to my awesome channel members and Patreons. Shout out to my Lieutenant tier members, Mr. Eddie V3 and Miss Major of the Void. Shout out to my Sergeant tier members, Mr. Damiak, Mr. Andy McGee, Mr. Warsmith Fireheart, and Mr. Corn's Butcher. Shout out to my Corporal tier members, Mr. Bowen and Mr. Tremail the Math Kitty. And then finally, but certainly not least, shout out to my Private tier members, Mr. Thomas Waslons, Mr. Ivan_SVW, Mr. Michael Hayeda, and Mr. Hattori's Cuz. And very big shout out to my Patreon members, Mr. Fortus Unum, General Alexander, and Mr. Bulwin. Thank you guys also very much, it means the world to me. Next week I'll get everything sorted. This week has been really crazy and I'm kind of a little burnt out right now. Not too much, but I'm getting there, so I gotta make sure that I look after myself real quick. But don't worry, next week I'll get everything sorted. So thank you so very much for giving this to me. It means the world to me. If you guys want to join these awesome peeps, you can sign up with the memberships and you get access to these videos early. Bunch of behind the scenes stuff, hand in making these videos happen. You get a part in the channel, some decision making, and if you sign with the Captain tier, you gain a specific video topic about quite literally anything, any series, it doesn't matter, whatever it could be, and I will cover it the very next day. Yes, I will. But remember, it's always be free, and whether you give me $1 or not, I will love you simply for giving me the time of day, because your 20 minutes means more to me than your $20. Mwah! Yes, I do. But ladies and gentlemen, I've been the General Bradley 101. You've been beautiful, awesome, and amazing people. Thank you all so very much for watching. Make sure to stay resolute out there, boys and girls. And I will catch y'all next time. Dismiss, Rangers. Honestly, I feel like the fist would be more popular if yellow wasn't such a bitch to paint. Lemon.